Hey everyone, so it's time to show you Ashran. Now Ashran is essentially the large new PvP feature that's coming in Warlords of Draenor, and it is just released on the beta. Now I've got to say my impressions are very positive. This place is a lot of fun. I've been running around it for about 4 hours, and yeah, look, it's just fantastic. So in this video I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of the gameplay. I'll talk about the main lane, so the main sort of tug of war gameplay that goes on, and then I'll talk about the side objectives, which include the Quarry, the Burial Grounds, the Stadium, the Tower, the High King, and then maybe I'll round it off by showing you our bases and some things like that. So then, for the overview. Well, Ashran has essentially got the Alliance and the Horde on two different sides of this island, and in between their two bases, there's this big lane, like this big road, okay? Now that's the main place where your battle is going to take place. Essentially, it's kind of like, you know, in, say, AV, if you were to have two Zergs and have them, say, meet in the middle, but actually have them fight, it's a little bit like that. Now, while the gameplay is quite Zergy, it does feel pretty decent, and it is augmented by a number of cool things that happen. So anyway, you've got that main gameplay. Now, the actual fight in Ashran seems to work in waves of 300 reinforcements, so whenever someone is killed, some reinforcements are lost from their side, and whenever a friendly NPC is killed, you also lose reinforcements. So basically, you kill the enemy, and then you will win one of these little waves, and essentially it's just a series of waves of 300 resources, and I'd assume that in the final game, if you win one of those waves, then perhaps you would get a reward or something like that. Now, at various points in the battle, some interesting things can happen, which are basically designed to shake up how the actual gameplay works. So from time to time, a captain from your side could actually join the fight. Now, the captains are strong. They've got about 4 million health, they do special abilities, and they really have to be taken down, or else they're just going to basically get into your Zerg and start wrecking your friends. So there's that. Now, at your bases, there are a number of things which you can activate. This, unfortunately, is something that people haven't been doing in Ashran yet. I just imagine that's because it's rather new at the minute. But for an example, there's an Ancient of War, and you can essentially go around and collect these artifacts in the island. Now, the artifacts are mainly collected from PvE, in the places that sort of surround the main lane, and a lot of the bonus objectives involve getting these artifacts. Now, the artifacts themselves could be, say, turned in, and then that could give you a War Ancient, which would help push your lane, or they could be used to buy some buffs or something like that for your character. And it seems like there's a good bit of gameplay going around and based on the acquisition of these artifacts. And basically everything in this feeds into the core idea of trying to push your lane. And overall, it just feels great, I've got to say. Now, one concern that people would have is that, say, maybe you're the Horde and you're losing. And maybe then you'd be in a bit of a bad spot because the Alliance would all be at the bridge of your base just ripping you to shreds and there's nothing you could do. Well, if you are inside the enemy's fortress, your kills don't actually count towards, towards the resource counter. So I suppose it's balanced out in that way, and also your bases have got elite guards that do a lot of damage. Now, if you have a full Zerg of players in there, they're not going to be a massive problem, however, they will start to kill individual players. And that's basically it. You try to push the lane, and these resource waves happen. They maybe last from 10 to 15 minutes each, then they just reset and you keep on going. I'm not too sure exactly how things are going to play out. Obviously, this is only me speaking after 4 hours of testing the place, but it's really cool, and just about every objective feeds back into the core idea of you pushing your lane and just beating back the Horde/Alliance. Now then, that's basically the core gameplay. If you want to actually hear a live commentated, I suppose, match of Ashran, then I'll throw up a link somewhere, because there will be a video on my channel at about the same time that this one comes up. So that's pretty nice. Another thing you'll notice in this footage that you're watching right now is that there is a player who has got this weird orb on them. Now that orb will increase their health by 200% and the damage that they do by 200%. This orb is looted from the various sort of bonus objective parts of Ashran, and they seem to spawn seemingly at random, and they are marked on the map for everyone to see, so I'd imagine that there would be some sort of competition to get one. Now, I've seen these basically appear in every single one of the bonus objective areas, which is pretty cool. It's a nice little buff, and if you die when you have that on, the orb falls to the ground and someone else can pick it up. So that's a nice bit of gameplay, and I suppose there will be a good rush to get one of those. I know that even one player at 200% damage and health doesn't matter too much, but I mean, on a personal level, you kind of want that for yourself because it's badass. Anyway, so I'm about to get myself horribly murdered here, and yeah, let's just move on to the bonus objective areas. Oh, and finally, just to add, you can get inside the enemy's PvP staging ground, not their actual faction hub, but their staging ground, and if you are in there, you can start to kill their vendors and stuff like that. That would actually include the Conquest vendor as well. However, as I said a while ago, it's actually pretty hard to do because of all the elite, like, just elite mobs and strong things that are in there. Though I suppose it is a nice bragging right being able to kill your enemy's vendors and things like that, though I can't see it happening all too often. Just one little note before I start talking about the bonus objectives themselves on the various parts of the map. This is still in testing, we're only 4 hours in, and the reason why I'm doing this overview video is just to bring everyone up to kind of a baseline level of understanding for Ashran. So while I do not know exactly how every single bonus objective is going to function, this will just serve to inform you as to the general state of the entire island, so that as we move forward with the Ashran and Warlords coverage, you'll just be kind of like better prepared to, absorb it all. Anyway, I do know quite a bit about these, and I've been running around them for ages, so it's really cool. Anyway, with all that said, let's get on with the video. Okay, so with the main gameplay talked about, let's cover the bonus objectives. Now, the very first one I'm going to talk about is the Quarry, and that's the place you can just see my character in now. So it starts off just with this place that's got a whole bunch of Gorin and stuff like that, and you can kill them to get those artifacts that I talked about earlier. They, of course, can be turned in for various useful things, which is very nice. Now, here you can see a whole bunch of the smaller Gorin. Now, they only drop one each, however, that big, large guy, I think is an Ogre or something like that, some like mini Gron dude. He drops, I think, about 5 or 10. So you can go here and farm those up. However, what's really interesting is actually what is inside that mine. So I'm just going to cut ahead to that. And you can see once I get in there, I find this guy called Titanus. And he's a very large boss. I think he had a good few million health there. So it would take a large group of players to take him down. Now, I unfortunately do not know exactly what happens when you take him down. Of course, no one's actually done it yet in the beta, but here's what I'm going to imagine. You'll probably get a buff for your team. You will probably unlock something to fight for your lane, and you'll get a whole bunch of those artifacts that you can turn in to the various vendors at your home base, so you could send something like one of those Ancients of War out into battle. I thought this was a really cool little place, and it was definitely impressive that Blizzard decided to add such a large structure just beside the main PvP place. Now this, in terms of how impressive it was one of the more cool things, honestly, that I saw. Some of the other side objectives are a little bit more tame so far, but still, I've got to say, this is looking really solid. Alright, so here we are in the burial grounds. Now, unfortunately, I am not aware of any unique event that's went on here. I have kept an eye on the place, but honestly, not much has happened, and really, not many players were going for it. Now, I know that the Orbs of Power that I talked about earlier can spawn inside here, so I suppose there is gameplay with that, but otherwise, it just seems like you would be here trying to farm up those, those Ogre artifacts that are used to purchase things like Ancients of War, a few vanity, like, sort of items, and then also just some little PvP buffs. For an example, there's one buff you can buy with this that will basically allow you to mount up instantly for an hour, which is pretty cool. So that's essentially the burial ground. The place I'm moving on to now, is technically inside the burial ground, but it is more of a stadium. However, strangely enough, it's not in the stadium area, so that's a bit odd. This is where one of the Orbs of Power will spawn, and I would imagine that some sort of event goes on inside this stadium, but we just haven't seen it yet, and I have been spending a lot of time in Ashran, so I don't know what's going on there. However, it is full of really powerful ogres. These have got from 800k to 1 point something million health, so if you're there with a group of players, then it could be really good for farming up those artifacts. So with that done, let's move on to the stadium. Now, the stadium is, oddly enough, not the stadium that we were in. It is this bizarre swampy place, which I'm guessing is just a ruined stadium. It's pretty nice. There's, again, lots of mobs here to kill, and it is also one of the spawning areas for the orbs. Unlike some of the other parts of the place, like maybe the mine that had the boss, or the Ogre King place, which I'll show you in a minute, there didn't appear to be any sort of mini-boss here or anything like that. It just looked like it was a swamp with some ads in it, which could perhaps be the location for the Orb of Power. Now, of course, my fun here got destroyed by a rogue, but I, went back and looked at this at other times, and really, that's about it. So, let's move on to the Ogre King, who's a lot more interesting. Next, let's move on to the Ogre King. Now, this is really cool. By the way, I'm currently basically at the very middle of Ashran, and at the very middle of Ashran, to, I believe, the west, you will see this. Now, this is the seat of the Ogre King. The Ogre King himself is just over there, and you can see a Horde and Alliance champion. Now, this is pretty cool. So, if you defeat the opposite faction's champion, then the Ogre King will side with you, and he'll jump into the middle of the lane, and he'll start attacking things and helping you out. He does a whirlwind and a few other attacks like that, as do the champions actually, so we did end up killing the champions, that was fine, and then the Ogre King jumped in and helped us out, but he didn't seem to be particularly helpful in a way. He just sort of stood there spinning around in circles, not doing anything, not really trying to push the lane. I'm going to assume that that is essentially just an early problem with Ashran. Now, as for the Ogre King himself, in terms of the availability of this little thingy that's going on at the minute, well, he sort of cycles between being there and not being there. You'll get a zone-wide message which says, the Ogre King has returned to his slumber, and he'll disappear. And then you will also get a server-wide message saying that the Ogre King is awakened, and that's when you can go and do what we just did and free him. So he jumps up into the air. I got a little bit confused, but he ended up landing in the middle, and he's spinning around. I think he's attacking a Horde NPC. Now, as you could see, it just popped up there, -1 reinforcements. I believe that's some sort of debug tool. I can't imagine that's like the final UI for it, but he just stood here anyway. That's a little bit unfortunate. Also, you could just see for a brief second there an NPC with a big blue thing on them. That's one of the Alliance commander, or like captain people, who rushes in to help you just defend the lane, I suppose. So they just sort of chill out in the middle. Or I think they push towards the middle and then they stop there and chill out, because I didn't see any of them try to push the Horde base. Anyway, so with that done, there was nothing better to do than just get back into the fight. But yeah, that's essentially the Ogre King sub-objective covered. I think he's really cool, and I just want to see what it's like eventually. Alright then, with that covered, let's talk about the tower. Now, the tower's odd, right? In that there does not seem to be a lot going on here. I mean, sure, there's a giant tower, but when I went inside the tower, there wasn't anything there, so I'd imagine it's still a work in progress. And I think that as with all of these bonus objective areas, there is probably something large akin to that world boss, you know, sitting in there waiting for you to tackle. It's just that Blizzard hasn't really implemented them all yet. So the one thing that you can do here is grab these little piles of rocks and throw them at enemies, but bar that, it's just full of a bunch of ogres who are channeling some fire spells. And I mean, that's fine, the place is interesting enough. Again, you can use it to start farming out those artifacts, but other than that, it's really rather dull. So you can see right now I managed to get that the rock, and the rocks hit for like 60k, you know, in that radius, so they're certainly very powerful, and I guess that if you are AoE pulling these, and then using loads of rocks, you're basically just going to get a crazy amount of artifacts. So that's pretty cool. I even went in this little hut, and once again, there was nothing in the hut. So I just don't know what's going to go here. They clearly haven't implemented it. Anyway, so that's basically the last of the bonus objectives covered. Okay, so just for the sake of showing you the Alliance base and rounding off the end of the video, I'm just going to jump in game for this. So here you go, here's Ashran. Oh well, actually I should probably just show you the Ancient of War in action. There it is. You'll see more of that later on, but yeah, that's what happens when an Ancient of War runs out. As you can see, the Horde were kind of in our base killing our dudes. We've lost a lot of elite guards. Anyway, so this is the base itself. Now, the actual commander of the forces is, who is it? Yes, Anne Dunworthy. So she's there. There's a whole bunch of NPCs around the place. There are class leaders, in fact, for every single class, and you can hand in your artifacts to them. Harrison Jones is here. That's where the Ancient of War would stand, and here's the guy who summons it. You can see there that you need 300 total artifacts to summon one of those, so that's nice. Here's the main base. There's not a great deal going on in here, but I'll show it to you anyway. I suppose just to walk you through everything, there's the Quarry, there's the burial grounds, the stadium, the tower, and there's the Ogre King. There are little camps of Saberon guys in here and in here, but there's nothing really associated with them, and they don't appear to be sort of noted as one of those bonus objectives, so I don't know what Blizzard are going to do with that. Anyway, that's essentially this part of the base. Honestly, rather dull, just looks a little bit unfinished. Okay, sorry about that, we just got booted out there. Of course, beta's beta. One thing I should also mention is I did see in one of the early Blizzard drawings for the tower, like there being some sort of path behind. I couldn't find that, but apparently that's there. Anyway, so this is essentially just a look at the base. Here's Harrison Jones with his artifacts. That's fine. There's a look at the Alliance city. Now, instead of getting, say, Bladespire or Karabor, you're going to get a area that is basically around this size, so it's a lot more compact than those places would be, and of course, it is located right beside Ashran. However, it's its own issue, and it's not the topic of this video. Essentially, Ashran itself, the PvP thing, is a lot of fun. I really want to see how much depth they add via the unique things in the burial grounds in the stadium. They just don't seem to have activated at all yet. Oh, also there are these towers. Now, of course, these towers are cool enough. I think they act as spawn points. Don't quote me on that. I haven't actually died too much in Ashran, strangely enough. But yeah, I'll run up to the top of one of these for you. I guess maybe if you're a marksman hunter with some of the range buffs, you could perhaps shoot people from up here. But I don't think it would be particularly effective because they just step backwards and run away. Well, that's essentially it for Ashran. Of course, here we go. We're out of the Alliance base and we're just running up the main lane. Now, I will do a full-on just like playthrough of Ashran, so again, check the description of this video. I'm sure I'll have a link to it there. But for now, that's it. A brief little overview of Ashran. Essentially, you are in this base or this base. You want to push down this lane in the middle. And there are little side objectives here, 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 and here that can aid you with that. Seems like a really cool zone. Here's the little resource thingy that, of course, will tick down to 0. And once it ticks down to 0, it just says, this wave of the battle has ended, and then a new one starts. No idea exactly what's going to go on there. And, by the way, may these guys haunt your dreams forever. With all that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.